Hi, Ricardo. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. How you doing, Frost?
I'm good, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you on the
Hey,
podcast.
absolutely my pleasure to be here. Big fan of the podcast channel. Mm.
Appreciate it. It'd be, you know, it'd be. I think a lot of people in probably Mendix would know who you are, but for those who don't, it'd be good for a bit of a start with a bit of introduction to who you are.
Sure, sure. My name is Ricardo Perdigão. I'm Brazilian, as you can tell by the accent. Been living here in United States for the last 25 years. You know, I'm a solutions architect manager for Mendix. Have been with Mendix for 4 years. And I have a dual role where in the last 2 years, I've been fully focused on researching and doing and working with customers around Gen AI. I'm also an AI practice lead for Americas, kind of the go-to resource for the field in the Gen AI side here for Americas.
Nice. And rewinding kind of prior to Mendix, your background in tech, kind of, can you give me a quick kind of summary of how things ended up even before Mendix, how kind of
Sure.
things evolve, and before kind of life before Mendix.
Absolutely. Been in this area, on the IT area, from all my life, right? Like I started with 16 years old in Brazil, started working with a company called Progress Software as a database company. From Brazil, I got transferred here, worked for them for many years here in US. Then, in that database company, I did pretty much everything from development all the way to services manager, you name it. Like every
Yeah.
kind of position around IT, I think I had my hands on at some point in time. At one point, I've even at Progress, I shifted to become a solutions architect more on the pre-sale side.
Mm.
And then after I left Progress, I went for PTC, worked for
Mm.
PTC, which is in some areas is a competitor of Siemens.
Yeah.
Worked for them for a year. I'm very into like futuristic technologies, and it was when VRs came out, augmented
Yeah.
reality, right? Like I was in love with that technology when it came out. So I left Progress to go work with PTC around partners and augmented reality. Worked there for a while. Then when I left them, and after 2 years, and then I went work for a big retailer here in Florida, City Furniture. They are one of the biggest furniture
Mhm.
retailers here in the state, and I was to be their enterprise architect. I've never worked directly for
Quiet.
a non-technology company,
Yeah.
right? Like that was the
Yeah.
first time
Yeah.
in my career saying, "Hey, I want to see the other side. I want to go
Yeah. Yeah.
to experience the other side." And it was fun. Worked for them for 2 years. Was the enterprise architect. Got to experience COVID while working for them, all the challenges and
Wow.
everything. Being
Yeah.
an enterprise architect was getting used to being hunted, right? Because we are on the sales side. We're always making the calls, trying to
Yeah.
make the
Yeah.
sales.
Yeah.
I was in the exactly opposite side where
Yeah.
I was the one that was being called upon every day. They'll track down my wife. They
Yeah.
call everybody to try to sell me, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I was leaving that side of the world for a while. And then a colleague of mine from Progress uh, called me one day, say, "Hey, well, I'm working for this local company, and we are looking for someone like you. Like, would you consider, right?" Like, and we worked together for many years, and I do
Mm.
respect her a lot. So I said, "Yeah, like let's talk about it, right?" Like, and it was fun because she gave me a call. I didn't think anything of
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
until one day when COVID was about to finish. I said, "Hey, now I can move out of. I wanted to move out of
Yeah.
South Florida, so yeah,
Yeah.
maybe working in a technology company, I can go back to work from home, and I
Yes.
can move, right? Like, because before I was
Yeah.
working on premise." So she called me, and that's how I got introduced to Mendix, and that's where I started. Like, being in Mendix for almost 4 years now.
Wow. Wow. And when she called you, and obviously, I get this a lot. Usually when someone started for Mendix or any kind of most low-code platforms, whether they've been referred or someone's called them. Prior to that, they've never really heard of Mendix, right? Or kind of haven't really heard of some low code. Some people are not aware of low code, or it was called rapid application development back in the day, right? Were you aware of low code before that and
I was,
Mendix?
I
And
was
yeah.
at City Furniture when I was there. One of my projects was to evaluate low code, right? Like, so
Oh, nice.
I did an evaluation about systems, right? Like, and that's where we
Okay.
were going towards to,
Yeah.
you know. And I look at Mendix at that time, and I don't know why. I think because at that time Mendix didn't have like so much
Yeah.
brand awareness. So
Mm.
I don't know, but I had to pick one to evaluate it,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
at that time I picked
Yeah.
the out systems, and we did look at it into it.
Mm.
It did not work out because of
Yeah.
not because anything related to
Yeah.
out systems, but
Mm.
because of COVID and the shifts
Yeah.
of priorities, we end
Sure.
up dropping the evaluation, right? Like, so I knew a little bit what low code
Yeah.
was. I
Yeah.
didn't know anything about Mendix,
Yeah. Yeah.
Mendix was completely new to me at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. So what was your first impression when you kind of then heard of Mendix? Obviously it's great that you'd already dabbled with low code and evaluated. So when you kind of saw Mendix and went through the process of interviewing, was there any, were you skeptical at all? Were you in trust of your ex-colleague who referred you? What was your feeling?
I was a little bit skeptical, right? Like, cause I've been a high code developer for a
Yeah.
long time, right? Like I still do some stuff in I still like to keep my
Yeah.
that kind of skills in
Yeah.
hand, right? Like, but I was a little, and then when we talked, like, oh, part of being an SA, you have to write a full project and present it to a panel, right? Like, and you have
Mm.
a week, maybe two at most, to write the whole, to learn the
Mm.
tool and write the
Yeah.
whole
Wow.
application and then present it. That's part of our
Yeah.
normal solution architect interview process, right? Like, and I was like, okay, that's a challenge. Like,
Yeah.
let me try to figure that out, right? Like, but it was smooth, right? Like, I think I think I end up doing it today, like knowing how much more, like you can pretty much do anything you do with high code, with low code, right? Like, it's just
Yeah.
a different way of developing it. But at that time, right, like I was a little bit skeptical, right? Like, you try to fall back on your high code as much as you can. And
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
low code way of doing it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's very powerful, right? Like,
Yeah.
but I don't believe when I applied and started, I did a full understanding of low code, right? Like, to me, it was
Yeah.
just the UI side, just the development
Mm.
side. I did not see the whole life cycle, the
Yeah.
deployment,
Sure.
the maintenance, everything that comes with low code, right? Like that. At that point, it's still pretty new to me,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
got introduced to it very quickly.
Yeah. And you touched on your role and what you're doing in Mendix, and kind of, you've got this interest in AI, you've got a keen interest in AI, and obviously everyone's been talking about it, and if it's not mentioned in a conversation, then no one's
Exactly.
interested, right? So when did that kind of when did that interest kind of come into you, and how was that kind of incorporated into your role?
Very good. So taking a step back, like going back 2 years when ChatGPT was just
Yeah.
launched, right? Like,
Yeah.
that was like, oh, that's just hype. That's like everybody was
Mm.
very doubtful of it, right? Like,
Yeah.
at that point, I was already heads down on it, right? Like, trying to
Yeah.
learn,
Yeah.
and everybody was like very doubtful that would go anywhere. That it was, oh, this is just a hype. This is just something that's gonna
Yeah.
disappear. And I was like, no, there's something here, right? Like, trying to show that to internally and externally that there was a big future ahead of it, right? So in the beginning, I was very involved into that internally and externally, like explaining what could be done, what the future could look like. And then over this period of time, like, more and more, it became clear to everyone, hey, it's a big
Yeah.
paradox shift, right? Like, we all shifting towards that. It's not a hype. It's not something that is gonna go away like
Yeah.
many other technologies we've seen in the past, and we dabbled in. This is something that's gonna fundamentally change everything we do, right? Like, with that, my role starts shifting and more like enabling internal teams, enabling customers, right? Like, in the
Yeah.
what's there, what's possible, how to use the technology. And in the last 6 months, I became more like a level two, where we have a lot of people in the field
Yeah.
that has that knowledge already, and I
Mm.
became like uh, say a level two expert. Like, hey, I can't figure
Yeah.
this out, Ricardo. This is very complex.
Yeah.
Can you come in and jump in and help me out, right? Like, from a customer and internally, right? Like, I become
Yeah.
that level two in the AI knowledge. But yeah, it's becoming something that in every conversation in different levels, right? Like, it's always the topic one way or the other.
Yeah.
It's funny, in the beginning people would joke around, they'll call me ChatGPT, they'll make jokes, like, because I was the only one using it, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
but now
yeah.
everybody does, right? Like, so it's like, say, hey, you
The
left
joke's
when
on
I
them,
was
right?
like,
Yeah, 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 exactly. That's funny. And your role is, you work very close with the R&D team and AWS even, which helps influence, the product direction, right? So how do you kind of bridge what the customer needs are versus your own product roadmap?
It's like, first, myself and R&D, right? There's two fronts. That's what we have today, right? Like, we're trying to promote that to customers, explain. Sometimes what they want can be translated to what we have most of the time,
Yep.
but sometimes it's just an enablement thing. And there's also the look ahead, right? Like, trying to see, because our R&D before AI, not only R&D, R&D in general, right? Like, before AI, it's very focused on returns, right? Like, hey, what's people asking? How many people is asking for this? How many this is going to bring me, right? Like, that's kind of like how R&D usually works, not Mendix, but R&D in general. They
Yeah.
always focused on the return of investment on what you're going to try to build.
Mhm.
And to me, Gen AI kind of changed this a little bit, because Gen AI evolves so fast, changes so fast,
Yeah.
right? Like that. Sometimes you cannot be looking on what the customer is asking for today. You got to be looking what they're going to be asking in
In the
in a in
future,
a
yeah.
in the future, right? Like, and you
Yeah.
got to take that leap, right? Like, you have that leap of faith that that's going to be the thing, right? Like, and you got to start looking at those things. Like, today, there's technologies like MCP servers,
Yeah.
agent to agent. Like, is anybody really using that yet? It's
Yeah.
1 in a billion, right? Like, very few
Yeah.
people have that. But should we be investing in that, right? Like, should we be preparing our tool to do it,
Mm.
right? Like, and that's those conversations, right? Like, I'm always trying to start those conversations with our R&D, because it's very focused, like, on what's people asking today, and the Gen AI is moving at such a fast pace
Yeah.
that you cannot only look at what people is asking today. You gotta try to
Yeah.
look ahead, and sometimes you gotta take the leap of faith and invest, because
Yeah.
that might be something that is gonna be, and if you wait until people start to ask, then you
Mhm.
might be too late to the game, right? Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's kind of the relationship. And I do that a lot of for conversation. Sometimes I do experiments. You probably saw on my LinkedIn,
I
right?
saw,
Like,
yeah, 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 video,
do
yeah.
experiments.
Yeah.
Like, I remember about 2 years ago, when, like, a year and a half ago, when no, everybody said, "Hey, ChatGPT is gone away. It's just a hype and
Mm.
everything." I was trying to build agentic chatbots to build applications in low code, right? Like,
Wow.
I
Yeah.
I always say, "Hey, it can be done here. Like, let me show you. Like,
Yeah.
that can be done." And then when people saw that, then there was a huge shift, right? Like, oh, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
let's go set up a team to actually
Yeah.
do it, right? Like, and that's where we have pretty much everything I showed, and way more
Yeah.
than what I showed they have it today, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I'm always trying to look that next step, like, building business logic in low code with AI. I believe it can be done, right? Like, so I've been
Yeah.
like, hey, can I build a prototype
Yeah.
that maybe will inspire R&D teams to
Mm.
go implement it, right? Like, so
Yeah.
that's kind of how I try to look at it. I'm always trying to see if I can see something that's gonna significantly change how we build or how
Yeah.
we do low code today, is trying to see how can I paint that vision. It might be through
Yeah.
words, through demos, for prototypes, whatever I can do to paint that vision to help keep it moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely passionate about Gen AI, as you can tell.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that ties in with what you said earlier about, people calling you ChatGPT because everyone thought it's a hype, right? Everyone thought, okay, this is going to go away. And then it shifted where now everyone's behind. They're like, oh, we
Yeah,
need to rush. We need to get on
to
this
catch
wave.
up, right? Like,
We're gonna miss the wave. And so now it's a position of, okay, do you catch up? But you need to catch up, but then you need to be forward thinking that, okay, if I'm just going to catch up, everyone else is kind of already there. How do we kind of see the future? And it's so difficult with the way things are moving. And obviously it's interesting to see and fascinating how things have moved, but it's also fascinating to see how some people have, like you, who banked on it early and said, this is, you better stop and listen and concentrate. and there's other people who I think who are really still playing catch up even now, even though it's
Even
kind
now,
of
yeah.
deep in conversation, right? And when we spoke a few weeks ago, I mentioned, when I went to Gartner and they were sharing stats about 50% of AI, projects fail. They're just kind of because people they try to just accelerate something just to make sure they're not being left behind, right? So it's kind of, how can we just, okay, AI, let's hire an AI expert. Who is an AI expert? There's not enough around, right? So,
Exactly, exactly.
so it's one of those things. And then, talking about kind of, with everyone now on this AI hype, it's the kind of, you don't want them to obviously get lost in the hype. So how do you kind of guide them from, AI idea to kind of production ready solution?
First step to me, like that I try to do, and people in the field try to do is like assess where are you on that AI journey, right? Like that's
Mm.
very important. Like I can throw you a bunch of jargons, I can think
Yeah.
this amazing, I can show you an amazing demos, right? Like, but
Mm.
if you don't know how to do any of that, like, is that really useful to you,
Yeah.
right? Like, you don't understand what's happening behind the scenes. If you can't somehow visualize how can you apply that to your problems, right? Like it doesn't connect, right? Like it goes anywhere, doesn't go anywhere. So to me, like a first step is like trying to assess where you are. If you are knowledgeable about AI, right? Like then yes, like let's jump in and try to talk about problems, solutions, look at your data, look what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to do. But 99.9% to me, it's like, let me teach you a little bit about AI, right? Like, let's start from the beginning, right? Like
Yeah.
let's take out some of because you hear by now, you heard so many jargons, so many things out
Yeah.
there. It's hallucinating. It's like let's understand what that is,
Yeah.
right? Like because people don't, right? Like they just, oh no,
Mm-hmm.
I will never look at that because it's hallucinating. It's not that it's
Mm-hmm.
hallucinating. It, most likely you didn't provide the proper data, the proper process that needs for AI to even work, right? I've seen so many
Mm-hmm.
times, I will, Ricardo, I won't look at AI because it hallucinates. Okay, give me what you were asking, right? Like, give me the data that
Yeah.
you give. Now let's look at it. Oh, the data that you gave, it doesn't answer the question you were asking. So not
Yeah.
even the most intelligent, like not even
Yeah.
Einstein would be able to answer that properly, right? Like,
Yeah.
but it's that enablement, right? Like trying to get, we're trying to, my approach is always trying to teach, the basics.
Mm.
Start from the basics. And again, 99%. There's a 1% out there that is very, very knowledgeable, and we can jump right into the problem. And
Mm.
here, let's look at your data. Let's look at the
Yeah.
problem. Let's look at the tools. Let's get it resolved, right? But the
Mm.
majority needs that first step, which is starting to get familiar with the concepts, what's happening, what a Gen AI does, how it works, what's components, and most of the people that I come across, very few, has that
Yeah.
knowledge today.
Yeah. It's
Especially.
funny.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's funny. I was going to ask you about, obviously, with that hype, and you've kind of answered, do you find most people actually lack the basic fundamentals of AI,
Ah,
right? And because obviously
99.9%.
everyone's talking about it, but obviously with the help of AI, you can sound like you know a lot, right?
Exactly,
But
you can sound
necessarily,
super brilliant. And in some way, you are hallucinating, right? Like,
yeah,
because then you're
yeah,
just getting the terms there, throwing them out there. They make sense, right?
yeah,
Like at a high level. But if you sit on a keyboard and start to, then you need
yeah,
a completely different level of knowledge,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like if you're
yeah,
gonna do it,
yeah.
If you,
And you've got hands-on experience with Azure, OpenAI, and AWS Bedrock and things like that. How do these platforms best complement Mendix as a platform?
Yeah, like the Gen AI, like the brain right behind Gen
Mm.
AI, not doesn't really happens at Mendix, right? Like or
Mm.
at the local locals
Yeah,
in general. It's usually one of these providers that will be providing,
yeah,
and they are kind of the brains for when you're talking about AI, right? Like we can absolutely integrate, talk to them, and
mm.
make it easy to communicate with them and work with them, but we are not really, and this is a lot of confusion. Sometimes I go to these events and the people say, oh, so you create the large language models, you train them, do the,
Mm.
no, we don't do those, right? Like
Mm.
those are coming from these platforms, right? Like what we
Yeah.
make, it's make it easily accessible to you, right? Like we make it super easy for you to consume. And in case of Mendix, we're now even embedding one into our platform. Like we have we bring it in AWS large language models, and we
Yeah.
embedding right in the platform. So you don't even have to go get a third party
Mm.
service and sign up for AWS. Because some small shops or medium shops, they don't want to have to go through all the process of configuring all that on AWS or Azure
Yeah.
or Google. So we kind of embedding it right there in the platform. So hey, you don't even have to think about it. It's right here in the platform. We have a contract with AWS. We make it.
Yeah.
We get a great price from AWS. We're just passing this
Mm.
along to you, and
Yeah.
you don't have to set anything up, right? But yeah, we definitely leverage them to be able to get, and not all models, like when you really start, like that 1%, when you really start doing AI, not all models are the same, right? Like they
Yeah.
have different levels of intelligence. Some are amazing for some things, some are not so good for other things.
Mm.
So it's like as you get to learn, sometimes you want to use like I love the AWS models because of its humanity, like the Claude, and like it's very human, like very
Yeah.
nice to talk to. And I did a lot of experiments with voice chat, right? Like, and
Mm.
using those, they are amazing because they make you look like you're talking to a real person, right? Like
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
difference, right? And there's other models that are very objective, very analytical, right? Like, and that doesn't sound as human as the other one, right? Like, so
Yeah.
it depends on if you really want something that is very close to perfection, that it's analytical, that precise, you probably will go to something like an open AI model that's very like, if you're something that's like sound like, that talks like a real human being, that that can I won't say show emotion, but like can imitate emotions, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's more of a for me from a cloud, right? Like so it's like
Yeah.
there are different, so there are situations where you want to use different
Yeah.
models for your solution, and there are also models that are super fast. Like there's a Grok, it's one of the providers,
Yeah.
sometimes very not Grok with a K, with a Q, like that's an open source provider. It runs extremely fast. So if you want
Yeah.
something that has to be real time, there's models out there that it's super fast. So that's depending on what your needs. Again, these are advanced AI. You might want to combine them and implement them on your solution. But low code make it very easy to just Mendix low code, make it super easy to use all of them. You just pick the one that you like the most or the one that's best for your use case,
Yeah.
and very easy to use all of them.
Yeah. And do you find, like when you're kind of advising this to customers or even internally, there's it's kind of, are they aware of these differences? Is it more very like, you need to continuously educate, which one is best for what?
It's internally we've been like going through this, like as a team, and like they
Mm.
now like seen it, right? Like we show, like
Yeah.
literally,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we
Okay.
open
Yeah.
them up,
Yeah.
like, hey, ask a
Yeah.
question here, ask a question here, ask a
Yeah.
question here. Like this is answer you in a millisecond. This takes
Mm.
50 seconds. This one here, it's a minute. This one
Mm.
is draw, right, just your answer. This one is like you're talking to your best friend,
Yeah.
trying to explain it to you,
Yeah.
sweet
Yeah.
words and everything,
Yeah.
right? Like, so we show them, right, like the
Yeah.
different behaviors out of, and this to some extent, all these behaviors can be adjusted, fine-tuned,
Mm.
triggered, like with system prompts, right? But it an end user rarely has that, like the people that's just starting with AI, they think it's all the same, right? Like,
Yeah. That's, yeah, yeah,
it's
that's
all
what I thought. Yeah.
ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's not, right? Like they are not created the same, they are not created. And even if you look at ChatGPT, there's different ones. There's like the mini, the nano, the big ones.
Yeah.
Like there's like some are very, like the intelligence. I try to rate them intelligence level. The intelligence level it's at 30%. Some of
Mm.
them at 80, right? Like so,
Yeah.
depending on which model, there's a level of intelligence, if that can be defined like that.
Yeah.
So you have at some point, we try to educate the people internally and externally, like how this works, right? Like and show examples and demonstrate it to them.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
that works.
Yeah, and when you're kind of, designing, these AI solutions, with Mendix for these global enterprises, what unique, cloud architecture considerations come into play in the discussions?
The main one, the first one that comes into place is the amount of data in question, right? Like how much are you looking to analyze a few hundred records, a few thousand records? Oh no, Ricardo, I'm trying to answer questions on top of terabytes of data, right? Like
Mm,
that it's the first question that comes into play, right? Like it's the amount of data and how is your data, you know, of structured, unstructured, where is it located, and because at the at like the 10,000 feet level, oh, we just put rag there and it's all good and it works. But when it comes to doing it right, like you gotta understand, like to do rag on top of a terabyte of data, it's something almost impossible today, right? Like not I
mm,
won't say impossible, but it'll cost you millions of dollars, right? Like so,
yeah,
it's trying to, and it might not even work, So it's trying to see the amount of data that you're looking at, to work what's the best approach, and there's different approach, there's rag, there's tooling, there's graph rag that's new now, there's different approach to prepare that data. I think the most of the time is spent on preparing the data for AI. The AI piece is not that complex. Preparing the data for it, can be a challenge, especially when you're talking about large volumes of data. That's
yeah,
when it
yeah,
gets tricky.
yeah. And with the AI features, with the platform, how are they, how are you kind of, able to kind of scale for thousands of users without compromising on the performance?
It mirrors pretty much like the traditional servers, like AI is built upon like traditional servers. So like the same way you can fire up multiple servers to support it, or load balance, all those existing functionalities still apply to Gen AI, right? Like there's not much difference there. The biggest concern there is cost. Like
Mm,
it's Gen AI is still somewhat expensive, right? Like if
mm,
yeah, it's getting better over the years. When I started looking at these, like one request could cost you a $1, right? Like I remember when I
yeah,
started, it was super expensive.
yeah,
Now these days with $1, you can go, like if you are a single user, you can probably do queries all month, like, and it
yeah,
should be fine, right? But
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, right? Like, but yes, it can scale, like through AWS, and they scale like at large scale. Who is providing the scalability is AWS, is Azure, right?
Mm,
Like even when you go to OpenAI is mostly using Azure, right? Like it's through those cloud providers. They are at the back end. They are able to scale the environment sizes, or even fire up multiple environments to support you. So that's not. But the cost, it's a big concern, right? Like even
yeah,
architecting for the cost, it's such a concern that when we architecting solutions, you look like, hey, your question is a complex one, so I'm going to send this to the full model that it's 80% of intelligence. Now you ask me something super basic that I don't need that much power, so I direct that to a model that, like a nano model, that cost 100 of the price of that other one, just to answer that piece of the question. So that's those kinds of considerations we take it, especially when talking about high volume, right? Like to be able to scale it up at an affordable cost.
so, and with your kind of, your kind of speaking to customers, and you're kind of involved in that process, what's some common things that enterprises are completely overlooking when it comes to combining low code and AI?
The knowledge need to make that work, right? Like a lot of them think that it just happens, right? Like that. Hey, I'm gonna put in a call here to ChatGPT, and
Yeah,
now my my enterprise is fully AI enabled, and it's not, right. Like they have to start small, start playing with something small, experimental, right. Like to build that knowledge within the organization. One of the reasons I think that adoption, it's not where it should be, and it's still going to take a few years, I would say, to fully adopt Gen AI through, it's the knowledge, right? Like it does require a lot of knowledge when you're dealing with complex use cases, when you're dealing with a lot of data, right? Like it does require a considerable amount of knowledge, and we are at the taking baby steps, trying to starting that knowledge. Very few corporations have departments dedicated to learn and study. And every time I talk to someone, they say, "Hey, pick up a simple use case you can think of, the simple chatbot, right? Like, don't think
Mm.
about anything production worthy. Just come up with it and
Yeah.
start building it, and not to put it in production and be in the news next month that you saved $1 billion, because not gonna
Yeah.
happen, right? Like,
Yeah.
but to build the internal knowledge, to build your team, to get them to start having access to the tools that are involved, to get access to the concepts that are involved. Because once they do that, first, a lot of them will fall in love with it. That's what I
Yeah.
see. Once they start doing, like, I see people become completely obsessed with it, right? Like
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
I'm here at night, sometimes I'm getting Slack and text messages from customers. Ricardo, I found this out. Ricardo, I saw this out. Ricardo, I figured out. They get in love with it, right? Like it's
Yeah.
a whole new world where you can get absolutely in love with it. They fall in love with it. And once that happens within your organization, right, like from that, then you're going to start to really address problems, right? Because you have the knowledge, you understand what can be done, you understand the tools. Then I think you're ready to really start to doing through AI solutions that are going to bring value to your organization. Without that knowledge, right, like a lot of people come to me and say, Ricardo, can you show me some cool stuff? Can you?
Mm.
I have a customer. Can you impress them with some cool AI use?
Yeah.
I can, but what that's gonna do, right? Like, I can show you amazing things
Yeah.
like with voice, with image, with all kinds of
Yeah.
amazing AI combination. If they don't have the understanding what's happening, they don't have the people on their side to get started in the most basic steps, right? Like they'll be impressed. Yes, they might
Yeah.
remember me for a week, but then that's it. It's gonna die and nothing gonna happen,
Yeah.
right? Like I
Yeah.
said, I rather have them come up with a very simple thing that they're
Yeah.
gonna throw away just to
Mm.
enable one or two people within their organization, and I
Yeah.
don't even care what tools, if it like
Mm.
I really just want them to get their hands on with a little bit of it, because
Yeah.
once you do, right, like that opens up a humongous door for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess also it's all about, that's the opportunity to make mistakes and learn, right? So it's about
Right.
kind of,
That
that's
has
the
huge
opportunity to break
consequences.
something,
Yeah,
that's your chance where you can break something. And obviously they're the opportunities where you learn the most when you break something or something goes wrong, something doesn't work. That's only going to then, that knowledge, like you say, only gets better because okay, next time we come across that, okay, when we were playing around with it, doing our own little use case, we know that doesn't work, right?
absolutely, absolutely. A lot of people come to me like, Ricardo, AI is my top priority for next year for my company, and they have like huge companies. In my mind, I'm asking, okay, so how many people do you have on a research department just learning it?
Yeah.
It is usually zero, right? Like none, right? Like, so, okay, it's your top priority. You wanna do like this
Yeah.
amazing breakthrough, but you don't have anybody that has the knowledge to, and they think it's the same as ChatGPT, and it's not,
Yeah.
right? Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of data preparation, and it's not sometimes not even about the AI. It's just about the data,
Mm.
like having data preparations, like preparing it properly, and it's a whole new knowledge line that you have to spend a lot of time to understand and learn.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my biggest advice for any company out there that's looking to do AI. Start by having a few people aside just to learn, right? Give them a few months just to say, hey,
Mm.
go build this simple throwaway project.
Yeah.
The project in itself might never make production, but the process of playing, breaking, trying, experimenting, learning, it's very valuable, because then at that point they'll be ready to go tackle the real problem.
Yeah. 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 And shifting, like, regarding developers, just developers looking to kind of level up and kind of, know themselves, more how to kind of work with AI. What would you say is the most effective way for them to be comfortable? I saw you've done hackathons, training session, things like that. What do you feel, other than kind of a throwaway use case, what else for individual developers who want to kind of make sure they're comfortable with it? What would be the best use case for them?
To me, it's like picking up a super simple chatbot or something like people want to out of the bat. Oh, I want to build this multi-agentic with 10 different agents talking to each
Mm,
other. Like that's not real, right? Like start with something simple, get a good sizable amount of data, right? Try to build a use case where you try to investigate that data. You know, that to me is your absolutely should be your first step. In Mendix, it's super easy, right? Like we even have like a starting from an agent to create a chatbot. You just go in there, create a project from that, and it guides you through it, right? Like, so I'll start there, build your first one, play with it, experiment with different models, look how they behave, right? That's usually what I would recommend. It's something you can do on your own, and it has a lot of resources out there. There's blog posts, there's videos. We
mm,
have a starting point in the app that in like few minutes you can get your first bot or agent, like however you want to put it, right? Like working, analyzing documents, analyzing data. I would start there, and then from there
mm.
you say, oh, with that I can already do something similar from my company. Okay, go play with your data, right? Like if you're comfortable with or simple. Every company has data that
Mm.
it's not. I wouldn't start also with top confidential data. Like start with
Yeah,
that it's data that you can play with, but that's usually how I would go. I'm self-taught, right? Like I go into YouTube, and I
yeah,
spend at least 3-4 hours every night watching a million
yeah.
different people,
Wow.
and that's how I learn. Like to me, the most valuable resource I have is YouTube, right? Because I
Yeah,
have like you can have like the inventors of Gen AI there, and you can
yeah,
watch
yeah,
them presenting firsthand how they
yeah,
do things, right? Like, and all kinds of different ideas, different experimentations, you know. But that's usually what I do. Some people like more of an enablement, a formal training. That
yeah,
those are also available,
yeah,
where you can go in. But yeah, I would start by going in, and you can do that in Mendix, or if you say, hey, Carlos, I don't want to even learn this email, I would just learn it outside of Mendix first.
yeah,
Okay, go to ChatGPT, open up
yeah.
there's a playground in there. Start learning the
Mm,
playground. Start learning what's
mm.
happening behind the scenes. Not the ChatGPT itself, but like the playground where you can see what happening between the API calls, what it's using, the tooling. Start playing with that. Like that. Whatever you learn is gonna apply to every model, every Gen AI. It's like that's the good thing. Like it's pretty standard across the board, right? Like how
Yeah,
things work. Once you learn for one of them, you'll pretty much learn from all of them.
yeah.
Even low code, because low code is just making it easier for you. The
Mm.
concept is still there.
Yeah, yeah. And it's great how you said obviously there's the training, but then also like the whole YouTube thing that you said, it's also up to I think individuals how much extra work they want to put in their own time even to, really kind of upskill themselves. It's only gonna you're only gonna know depending on how much you put into it, right? So if you are kind of you could do training, YouTube, books, follow people on any platform. I think it's all about the individual effort as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, and like anything else, right? Like the more time you dedicate it to something, the
Mm.
better you understand it, the better you will learn how to use it, right? Like I personally have been through phases where my wife look at me and like you are on one of those phases, right? Like let me know when that's done and you're back to your normal life,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
and then
Let me
go
know
for
when
a
you're
few weeks
available
and
to
then
have a chat.
and
Yeah.
yeah, like say, hey, I'm done now. I'm gonna take a 3 weeks break where I'm gonna go back to normal life, right?
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
mm,
I can imagine with AI, you can't even take a break because it's evolving so much.
exactly. Like if you take a too long of a break, then you have a
Yeah,
huge catch up later. That's for sure.
I can imagine. But talking about, and you were talking about earlier, obviously, with how much things are changing and evolving, and how do you coach a business, a customer, of kind of how can you really coach them when these capabilities are just forever evolving? How can they kind of have their strategy in place?
It's hard, right? Like because they can't depend completely on us because again, it's moving very fast. Like to
Hmm.
me, you gotta train some people to be their own Ricardos, right? Like their
Yeah.
own people that's constantly
Mm.
looking at what's happening and learning and applying, right? Like they have to start enabling their own people because once they do, right, like then they don't depend anymore on someone feeding them because I can feed you what it's the best in Gen AI from Mendix, right? Like, but it's leaving like there's that stuff that Mendix won't apply to low
Mm.
code or might not apply to
Yeah.
your problems, right? Like, and if you have someone in your company that's like, hey, I'm studying these, I'm working with this, I'm constantly monitoring, I'm bringing in technology to inside the company. To me, that's the best approach.
Mm.
That's usually the best approach because if you're hiring a consulting company to tell you, like they usually a few months behind, like
Yeah.
they will be, because them themselves might not be there. Like to me, the best approach, especially if you're a large organization, is to have a few people, a team there that
Yeah.
like playing with it, that's researching and learning it and spreading it throughout the organization. And I see that even happen within our own organization, within Siemens, right? Like we have
Mm.
teams doing exactly that, like building things, teaching others, doing webinars, doing enablements, building applications, right? Like we've seen that growing at a very fast pace, in the last few months, very
Yeah.
fast.
I think it's very similar to, with just low code, forgetting AI for a minute. It's always, if you're using a consulting company, that's fine, but it's always important to have internal capability and knowledge, right? And it's pretty much the same for AI.
Yeah,
I think
same concept of
with
center of
AI,
excellence. Like we
yeah,
call it center of excellence,
exactly,
right? Like
exactly
build
right.
your
Yeah,
build a. They have
yeah,
a local center of excellence. To me, it's almost
yeah,
like having an AI local, an AI
yeah,
center of excellence, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because it's also, I've heard cases about, even consulting companies that go in to do AI consulting work they've pitched something for a customer, but they're actually not an expert themselves, but they're learning on that project, right? So there's so much risk of you learning how to work with AI on a project where
On a
with a
project, a real
customer,
thing that you have
yeah,
to
a real
deliver value.
project, right? You're going in saying, yeah, we're an expert, but there's no knowledge base here. There's no knowledge base here. And that's a car crash waiting to happen.
Absolutely, and you see a lot of first gen AI projects fail, right? Like to me,
Yeah.
the reason is exactly that, because
Mm.
they are trying, right? Like they are learning through it. Like it's like trying
Mm.
to drive a car at 120 miles an hour and learning how to drive at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
you your chances of succeed are very low, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
are very low,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
chances of succeed, and that's why I like the throwaway project as your first
Yeah.
project, right? Don't put pressure on it. Like that gives you the chance of like, breaking things, experimenting, trying different approaches. Okay, because if you put a lot of pressure, like you gotta deliver this by the end of the month,
Yeah.
like then you go with whatever you think is the right thing, and there's a huge chance you're gonna fail. If you don't
Yeah.
put that pressure on, you make this more about an enablement effort,
Mm.
right? Like you're gonna have the chance of experimenting with different things, seeing what works best, consider
Mm.
security, consider all of those other things. Because when you're in a time pressure, like you might just overlook all that stuff. Like
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
care about bias, I don't care about security,
Mm.
I just care about getting that out of the door. Like, but if I'm doing something where I'm learning, like where I'm trying to experiment with the tools, I'm gonna learn not only the AI tools, I'm gonna think about security problems, bias, things that
Mm.
can come back later on and be all over the news. Oh,
Yeah.
someone built something that it's discriminating against X, right?
Yeah.
Like I never even
Yeah.
thought about considering
Yeah.
that, right? Like, but having the time to consider all those things and do and learn through that process to me is key. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. And even with the Mendix platform, it's evolving. With the introduction of AI. How do you see over the next few years? The Mendix platform evolving with all these AI capabilities. Obviously, like you said, you can't foresee the future, and but what's your kind of you know if you had the
I
the future ball, what
the
would you say?
future, I can tell you what I wish will happen in the
Okay,
future, right?
yeah,
Like I can,
perfect.
because personal dream, right? Like to me, AI is amazing at generating applications, right? Like, but it lacks visibility. Whatever it creates, you can't look into it, right? Like, let's say I come into AI and say, "Hey, can you build me this application to calculate loan payments?" Right? Like, you create 5,000 lines of code, right? Like, and it might even get you working first try. But then all of a sudden I say, oh, but I need to change that parameter here, and or I need to adjust. you're either going to have to keep relying on AI 100% blindly to keep adjust, or you're going to have to go in and understand those thousands of lines of code
Yeah.
to see where it broke. And sometimes AI get lost. Like Jenny, I work with this all the time. Like sometimes you like did 80% and all of a sudden there's one piece of the project that it can't do. It keeps in this loop where
Yeah.
it keeps making the same mistake over and over. And the only way for you to make it move on is you go in the code, you find where it's making the problem and say, hey, you're making the problem here.
Yeah.
Do this in a different way, right? Like this is today is a challenge for you to really build real applications, like enterprise grade application, fully build them with AI. Low code is very visual by nature, right? Like when you build business logic, when you build a database, you can immediately open that up and see it. Like I can see it in Mendix, out systems, any of this. You can open up the business logic right there in a diagram, and in a second you can look at the diagram and you can see what it was done, how it was done, and what it's doing. To me, the ideal future is where low code and AI fully merge, and you can generate all these things visually, right? Like, but very like instead of me writing a business logic by dragging and dropping, I go there
Yeah.
today. I say, hey, build me a business logic to do this long calculation, and it builds to me, but it builds me a diagram, not the code, right? Like, and
Yeah.
that diagram I can inspect, I can look at it in a minute, and I can let me run through it visually. And in a second, I can say, oh, this is I need to change that part of the flow is wrong. Can you adjust it? Can you make, like, when we get to that level, right? Like, I think that's going to be a humongous jump in productivity in low code, where you're not only like generating things, but you're generating meaningful things all visually, and you are able to interact with them. Because today, we have like to me, I have two teams. We have the Gen AI born solutions which generate code, like, and they are doing amazing automation, but they are not really doing a lot for enterprise applications, right? Like, and you have low code, which does amazing on enterprise applications for you to build them and do everything, but it's still like that merge of AI and building is still in these early days, for
Yeah.
everybody. Everybody's still in these early days. I think ideally in the future, those two will merge into a single thing where you will be able to fully generate applications, business law, not only generate a one-time thing, but interact with it, fully interact with it. Like, hey, here's generate me up. Oh, now change this domain model. Now change this business logic. Now change that UI. Adjust here, adjust there, and just guide it, right? Like it's gonna be a huge product. I still believe that humans will be guiding it.
Yeah.
I don't see in the coming years where you're gonna create an enterprise grade complex application by just giving it to AI and let it run with it. That
Yeah.
for me is still pre sci-fi years away. But I do believe that we're gonna get very soon to a point, soon I mean a few years, where you will be able to fully interact with it, to give it directions to build exactly what you need much faster. So
Cool.
to me, that's the ideal goal where I hope that low code reaches, like
Yeah.
that merge between Gen AI and low code. I don't believe that the one is going to replace the other. I think that the merge of the two is the future. Where the two will be one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the
And
question in my mind is
yeah.
who's going to get there first? The
Yeah.
Gen AI focused tools will start to venture into building
Yeah.
enterprise applications and build that, or the low code providers, right? Like
Mm.
will figure it out how to reinvent themselves to
Mm.
merge all that Gen AI
Yeah.
into them, which it's a race, right? Like
Yeah, of
everybody's
course.
in a race,
Yeah.
everybody's
Yeah.
in a race.
Yeah. Because there was obviously the discussion, about, when kind of this all, with AI in the mix, is low code dead, right? Is now low code dead with the introduction of AI, you know, traditional with AI versus low code with AI. Where do you stand on that?
I think no, local is not like I said, like whoever, like to me, the ideal future is where local and Gen AI is one and the same, right? Like
Yeah.
where we in a few years where you won't say, if you're talking about enterprise applications, right? Like they will be so tightly tied together that they one and the same, you know. But my my mind, I don't know who will get there first, right? Like one side I see Mendix, OutSystems, all the local players,
Mm.
right? Like on the other side, I see N8N, I see Langflow, FlowWise, a bunch of others like that.
Yeah.
The difference is like this side is focusing, the low code is focusing on building enterprise applications. These tools are building in fully automating everything, right?
Yeah.
Like, so both are racing towards like dominating like the
Yeah.
whole thing, right? Like who's gonna get there first? Who's gonna be able to do both, automate and write
Yeah.
enterprise applications, right? Like
Yeah.
I believe low code will, I truly
Yeah.
believe that low code will get there faster because we have not only the piece that generates the application, but there's also the whole software life cycle, like
Yeah.
deployment,
Sure.
monitoring, everything that comes with low code, right? Because low code to me, development is just a portion of it, right? Like there's the
Yeah.
whole platform around all these low code platforms to deploy, to manage, to
Yeah.
monitor, to do everything else, right? So I truly believe that low code will get there first, But yeah, I don't believe that low code will let that Gen AI will take over low code. I think it's going to be merged into low code for sure.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, it was great to speak to you, Ricardo. It was a pleasure. Thank you for, it's just your passion comes across. I can see how interested you are in the
Sorry if I'm too
topic.
passionate about it,
No, it's
right? Like
great.
I've
It's
been
great.
guilty of that. I'm too
No, that's
passionate
good.
about it.
The passion's great, and it's the whole time I've been speaking to you, I've been thinking, okay, I'm gonna have to get him back on again, in the future, when we'll see what he's continuously learning, right? Because obviously you're really kind of diving deep into this and really kind of, you believe this is the way forward. So I think, it'd be great to speak again in the future and see how things have evolved and how they've
Yes,
kind of
let's hope
changed.
this video ages well, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, no, I really appreciate you taking the time.
thank you so much for
And
us. The same
we'll,
here.
we'll,
Same here.
yeah, we'll keep in touch, and I'll definitely be keen to speak to you again in the future.
Same here. Very nice to meet you. Thank you so much for us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.